everybody here. Welcome everybody online. Like Matt said, I'm a machinist by trade. Primarily built plastic injection molds for many years. I've always been a motorcycle guy, snowmobile guy. I got my first snowmobile when I was 3 years old, and I've always tinkered with them ever since. My boss and I started our company together. Kind of fizzled. He sold it. He started it back up and hired me. We've always been, got him into motorsports. We do this ride together summer and winter. We built a few little things. We built a run-aboard punch years ago that was pretty cool. It helped evacuate the snow. It was a standalone. That kind of got going. And then the more stuff I came up with and he got more and more willing to try things, we just kind of grew from there. So in 2013, Polaris had released their quick drive unit, and everybody was talking about it, and I could see the benefits of it, and I understood it. And I approached him. I said, let's build a belt drive. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of R&D and a lot of design time and seed time and everything else to solidify that whole project. And he wasn't interested. And about 2 months into the season, I was riding a 12 Pro Climb, and they have them silly automatic tensioners that didn't work, and I broke a chain. Luckily, it didn't break my case, so we didn't have to tow out my snowmobile. So I borrowed his snowmobile, I went to the ridge, I called everywhere from Pocatello, Idaho to about here in Sandy, all the Arctic Cat dealers. Nobody had a chain. And I finally got a hold of a friend in Logan, and they helped me get a whole bunch of firewood. We started a fire, and him and our other buddy headed out. 5 hours later, they showed up with the chain, and about probably 10 minutes before it was pitch black, we had a chain on and was riding out in freezing cold weather, as you guys know. On the way out that day, he said, okay, I see the benefit of a belt drive for sure now, so let's start. So at that time, we had a guy that was designing our plastic injection molds. He got involved. It's my dream, my concept. He designed it. We went back and forth 4 or 5 times. Finally got it nailed down. Put some time on it, and it was pretty legit. We were pretty shocked with the performance gain. Back in those days, we pulled about 12 pounds off of a snowmobile. We pulled about over 3 pounds of rotating mass. And to kind of build some concept to that, it's rotating mass benefits. It's a big long equation. You have to know how far off of center you are. And so kind of a rule of thumb in the industry, they say for every pound of rotating mass, it's like gaining 2 horsepower. So in essence, we're pulling 12 pounds off a snowmobile back then and gaining about 7 horsepower. And it was pretty legit. So we moved down that way, got our CAT system nailed down. We went into it with the mentality we wanted a performance enhancing system. We didn't just want to sell you a belt drive and say, yeah, you got a belt drive on your snowmobile. We wanted it to be as light as it could be and remove as much rotating mass as we could remove and still have it bulletproof. So we're pretty, after, what is it, 7 years now, we're pretty happy with where we're at. Honestly, we've had two bearings fell on us, and we had one guy that had a pulley go bad on us. So we're pretty happy with that. In the meantime, Bret changed what he was riding. And he saw our drives and liked them, and we, after a couple of years, we kind of nailed down an idea and what we wanted to do, and we moved forward with that. We have added Polaris to that lineup, and then this year we've added, Skidoo to that lineup. This year we added a Polaris for the chain drive kit. So benefits of a chain drive, I can tell you one thing that I can see to a chain: it's stronger. But if a chain breaks, anybody in the audience have a chain break ever? Steve's shaking his head. Yeah, Aaron, Matt. So did you bust a chain case? Catastrophic, Steve says. I agree totally. So with the belt drive, literally on this system, there's 9 bolts here. You can, on this system, every system's different. You gotta realize that all the manufacturers are different. On this kit, this particular kit is for an Arctic Cat. You literally pull out the 9 bolts. You don't have to back the tensioner off or nothing. Throw away the old belt, get your new belt in there, work the cover back on, tighten it down. With the appropriate tools, you're probably 15, 20 minutes into it. But you have to have the appropriate tools and you have to be familiar with your kit. I'm sure that makes sense to you. That's really the only benefit of a chain drive, is just the strength. So you have a lot of weight, you have oil, and oil's a twofold mission. If you break your case, you have oil, gear oil all over. You have to do oil changes. The oil, like I say, is messy. When it's cold, when it's 30 below zero in the morning, Brett, what's 90 weight like?
Ice cubes.
Ice cubes, hard to drag chains through there. So that's kind of the pros and cons of a chain drive. Like I said, some of the stuff, obviously the first and foremost is the weight, and not necessarily just the weight, but the rotating mass. On the Skidoo kit, we don't really broadcast weights because you know how weights are, everybody plays a weight game, but we're pulling 3.5 pounds out of a Skidoo, 3 pounds out of Cat, and we haven't done a whole lot of weight stuff on Polaris. So that's where you get your performance gains, and what the rotating mass does is it just wakes your sled up immensely. It makes it more responsive, especially on the bottom through the mid-range. You'll notice a big difference. Enough of a difference that we've learned that we can even gear you up. Like we can go from a 263 to a 242, and it's got enough of a gain on the bottom that we can get you a little more track speed and without sacrificing anything on the bottom. Kind of a smooth utilization of power. You know, when you drop off of a hill and you hit your brake, what happens? It goes thunk. That's your chain, that's chain slap. So when you put a rubber belt on, you can see these belts are they're rubber, they're lightweight, they're pretty thin. You totally and completely remove that. Not only that, but vibration. You lose a lot of vibration because you're not transferring vibration through the jack shaft and through the motor and everything back down to the chassis. You have a rubber link between those. Some of the downfalls, obviously a belt's not as, the only con there is obviously a belt is not as strong as a chain. But is it durable? Absolutely. I broke 1 belt since riding kits for what, is that 7 years now? This will be my 7th year. I broke 1 belt. It had 1,600 miles on it, and it was somewhat self-inflicted. I'm not a jumper, and I kind of cased it into a face on the gas, and it broke. Duncan runs our kit. He's here in the audience. He hucks it. I mean, he goes big. I can show you pictures in our booth, but last year, you get familiarize yourself a little bit with the belt, and you understand the belt, and you might change your riding just a little bit. It doesn't really change your output of your riding, just your mindset a little bit. And he never broke a single belt last year. And in his words, he was going bigger last year than he had for a few years. So they're definitely durable. That's one of the big questions people ask about snow and ice, because this is in a foot down by your footwell. The Skidoo has some open spot down there, down in the footwell. Doesn't seem to matter. Doesn't seem to care. I'm sure that ice and snow goes through there, but we haven't seen any failure from that. Is there any questions along the pros and cons? Matt?
Can you explain the difference between a rubber belt and a plastic belt?
So the belt thing is kind of crazy. Everybody's changing, you know that. When we started in 13, I literally spent, I would guess somewhere between 15 and 20 hours on the phone with belt manufacturers and their engineers and telling them what we wanted to do. They have spreadsheets that tell them what size of belt you need to run. They literally ran our horsepower and our RPMs and everything, and they tell you you have to run a 2.5 inch wide belt. Well, that ain't gonna work. There isn't no room to do that. In the beginning, I landed with MBL because what they did different is they literally laminate everything together, and when this is over you can come up and look, but you can see that they laminate it all together in a barrel, and then they slice it to the widths that they want, and you can see every layer of the belt on the side, the cut section, cross section of it, sorry. So I was a firm believer in these belts in the beginning, and they're carbon corded, so belts do not stretch. So if you do run a drive and they're pretty sensitive to tensioning. It takes a little bit to figure out your tensioning. Once you get your tension nailed down, don't ever change it. It doesn't stretch. You're not gonna have to readjust it. If it's working, don't mess with it, type of attitude. Okay, go back to Matt's question. Gates actually was putting the carbon cords in a mold and molding around it, and then they would copolymer the outer edge with plastic. One thing about that I really didn't like is they don't like you to bend your belt down. That would give them heartache. Most of our guys put this between their PTO belt and their belt bag on their tunnel, and I sent pictures to these guys and asked them about that, and they were fine with it. We do offer Gates belts now. They have changed their process. If you look at the side of the Gates now, it looks the same. Durability, we have a handful of people that like that over these. I'm a believer in these belts, and I'm a believer in putting it where I want to put it and making it work. So it's kind of a benefit there. Does that answer your question? There is some strength added with plastic. There is some cons to having plastic. So, any other questions?
Since it's an aftermarket product, does it void warranties on a new sled?
Oh
if you
boy,
have problems?
That's a loaded question.
Dean, will you repeat the question?
So the question was, since it's an aftermarket product, does it void warranties on your sled? I personally have not had any issues with that.
Yeah.
Duncan says he hasn't either.
Dealer.
It's a huge dealer thing.
So specific dealer, by dealer by dealer. So
Yeah, it could be. If you had a problem with one dealer, how do I be politically correct? If you have a problem with one dealer, the guy down the road could do it. I mean, we're really not messing with. The only issue, I mean, and I haven't seen it at all, is you just got to make sure you don't get an air bubble in your oil line. Because on a cat, all the others we don't mess with oil, but on the cat we do. So something, this is a part of the seminar, the sales part of the seminar, right? I want to share with you a few things that we feel set us apart from some of the other manufacturers. First and foremost, I mentioned performance enhancing system. That's our mentality. We want it to be bulletproof. We're not going to give up longevity for lightweight, but we will have that concept. We've probably 4 different times there's 2 other belt drive manufacturers that I know of. We've had opportunities to weigh kits side by side. Every single time we've done that, we've pulled more kit weight and more rotating mass. And like I mentioned earlier in the seminar, we've had virtually 0 failures. We have hundreds and hundreds of kits out, and 2 bearings and 1 pulley. We're pretty happy with that success. So that's the main one. Another thing that we do is on all of our kits, we consciously interlock our cover. John, you got a question?
Oh, yeah, not to interrupt, but Mitch Hall is asking, what kit is he running / talking about? TKI, question mark?
No, it's a Mountain Valley Machine Kit, MVM Motorsports.
Cool.
So one of the things that we do different is, if you look at our kits, every single kit, no matter which brand, Arctic Cat, Skidoo, or Polaris, we actually interlock into the case itself, and we have a couple of reasons for that. First of all, if you look at a case, typically along the edges of the cases are super strong. They have a lot of ribs and supports and gussets built into them. So we want to pull from that strength, if you will. So we interlock into there to make this become part of the case and make it stronger. We also like the fact that when we do that, every single time you take this off and put it back on for whatever reason, you go back in the exact same spot. You're not relying on bolt clearances or anything else to get you back in the same spot. One of the big differences is tensioning. We tension different than everybody else. Everybody else has an arm that comes down. They use the stock tensioning bolt that's big and it's heavy and it's bulky, and then they lock it down with one bolt to secure it. We build a block here. We have a one-piece idler pulley with dual bearings in it. It has a block on the inside of here. It moves back and forth in this channel. It has like 5 thou clearance, so it can't go anywhere. It's literally just got enough to slide back and forth. And then once you get it tensioned, we lock down with 2 bolts. So nobody's ever lost a bolt out of their snowmobile, right? All the bolts always stay in. If you lose one of our bolts, you're not sunk. If you lose a bolt on a 1-bolt system, you're probably sunk until you find the bolt. Bret?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but with your tensioning system, you're pulling on the pulley to
Yes.
to adjust the belt, to tension the belt, and the competition pushes.
Yeah, that's we do. We try to pull, yes.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Repeat his question also so everybody can hear it.
So he said, it seems like we try to pull on our belts, and we do. If you notice, the belt goes on the back side. So you tighten this. When you tighten the tensioner bolt, it tightens your chain. I mean your belt, sorry. Does that make sense? Rather than loosen the bolt to push it across, because it kind of locks in on other systems, you loosen it to push it across. You actually tighten our system in a tightening direction to tighten the belt, if that makes sense. Another thing that people do.
So you're pulling up on the belt or pushing into it?
The belt's on the back side of this pulley.
Got it.
So the belt will come around this way, and this will travel. As you tighten this bolt, it pulls it this direction. So righty-tighty, that's to say it tightens your belt. And some things you go counterclockwise to
Alternatively, they're pushing up from the other side.
Yeah.
God, that's what I'm trying to understand, right?
Trying to remember, I kind of lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, nobody builds a bad system. They all work. There's some things, like I said, that we feel set us apart. Our installation, one other thing is, you're literally looking at a complete kit for an Arctic Cat on this table. So you have a bearing, because Arctic Cat bearings are single-sided seal, so we seal both sides of it to keep belt dust and stuff out of there. There's a little spacer in there. This is just a plastic piece that pops in your bottom bearing, so you don't have to replace that bearing. You can pack it with grease and hold it in there with this little plastic piece. One little spacer on the bottom just to create enough space we can get our pulley in, and then there's 3 bolts in there to hold the tank on. You get the cover with the tensioner in it. On the Arctic Cat, on only the Arctic Cat, you get an oil tank. This is our pulley. It's a 1-piece pulley. There's not 2 or 3 or 4 components. There's no bolts, bolt and flanges on. It's a 1-piece pulley. And the same with our bottom. We got a lower pulley and a belt. So simplicity is key in my point, in my thoughts in that. You don't want a bunch of parts that you have to keep track of. It's hard to teach people how to install it, so that makes our install super easy. What we do for installation instructions is we do online videos, so you can go to our websites if you're interested, mountainvalleymachine.com, and pull up the videos and see how the installation will go on your kit. You'll know before it even lands at your house how it's going to go and things to look for. Everything we build is billet in-house. We stick with the machine billet look. We think it looks cool. Most people really like it. We do offer anodizing. If you like anodizing, we can do that for a small fee. And that's really about all I have. Like I say, most kits, well, all kits, you'll be impressed with your throttle response gains. Some people say, I didn't really feel it. Obviously, everybody's a little more in tune with their chassis and their motor and their suspension and everything else and how it's working than other people. If you're familiar with your snowmobile and you put a drive kit on it, you'll notice a difference, guaranteed. Any other questions?
Hey, I'm going to come up here and do you have any questions from the field here?
We're good.
We're here.
Caught up.
You lightly touched on it, and I've always wondered about power to torque curves, kind of in general across the manufacturers. What should you expect? What kind of changes there, just in general?
So he's asking power to torque curves. Obviously, I'm a machine shop and I don't have sensors, and I'm not a manufacturer. I know that manufacturers have tested belt drives. I've tested our drives, and they put sensors and everything on, and they are seeing gains. The only thing that I can tell you is, like I said earlier, is rule of thumb is 2 horsepower per pound of rotating mass. So if you pull 3 pounds, it's like adding 6 horse, and you're pulling. It varies so much with kids. We pull probably 4.5 pounds of the oil and everything off of a Skidoo. Cats made changes. We're down to probably 8 pounds with the extra 2-stroke oil, the oil in the case, and all the components. We do have we have the chain and sprockets off of Bret's sled back in our booth. If you want to come back, and you can pull 2 pulleys and a belt, 2 sprockets and a belt. It's pretty obvious. We have all the cat stuff out of the kit back there, the tensioner, everything you can see. So to give you numbers, I can't do that.
So Dean, tell us why the additional reservoir or your own reservoir for the Arctic Cat.
So on the Arctic Cat, they actually clamshell their oil tank onto the case of their cover, was the first reason. And again, I got to be politically correct, but in 12, their tank held a gallon of 2-stroke oil. Who needs a gallon of 2-stroke oil to go on one ride? So and everybody on cats were like, well, I just fill it to the sight glass. And I'm like, okay. So the very first time I run my kit, I literally made a conscious effort before I put it on. We went for a ride, we rode 60 miles. You know, I filled it right to the sight glass. We rode 60 miles, came home, I put my belt drive on, I took my tank off my cat, and I 3/4 of the way filled this up. This would probably last you close to 3 rides, the way we ride. So you're still packing, that's 4 pounds of excess oil you're still packing. So that's why the plastic tank on there is, first and foremost, we had to. And that's kind of how we started. The first thing, the predecessor to this was I hated the oil tank, I hated the fact that it was so big, but we built a chain case cover out of Billet, used the same tank, probably in about, I don't know, 9 or 10, and to just remove weight that way. So we removed some weight with the cover, and then we removed a bunch of weight with the oil in the tank itself. So that's a predecessor of it, how it got started.
Thank you. So, hey, Bret, can you maybe fill us in a little bit about how a belt drive affects throttle response, spooling up, all things equal?
How does a belt drive increase throttle response? It's all about inertia. So with the belt drive system, we're reducing rotating weight. And so there's less inertia to slow down that spool up or spin up. And with more weight, you have more inertia, so it spools up slower, but it wants to maintain that same rotation. It doesn't want to change with more weight. With less weight, it responds quicker to your throttle action because there's less inertia involved, and it's quicker both in slowing down when you grab the brake or when you speed up by pushing the throttle. Did that tell you?
Yeah. So one other question: does it matter track length and lug height on a belt drive?
Track length, as far as no, I mean, so if you have a longer track, it weighs more, so there's more inertia involved, so it's going to effectively spin up slower because of that. but I don't know if you could really measure it. The track spins up really fast, but you can measure the difference in spool up of the drivetrain components.
So if I could add a little bit to what Bret said, this is kind of a funny story. A guy up in Idaho who's one of our really good dealers, sold a lot of kits, had a cat kit sitting there, and his wife kept saying, "Put that on my snowmobile, put that on my snowmobile." And he said he refused for a long time, and he finally kind of just got tired of listening to her and put it on. He called me after the very first ride and said, "I can't believe it literally made my wife a better rider," for that exact reason that Bret's talking about. She didn't have quite as much confidence as some people do, so she would second guess herself and then realize she done something wrong and get back in the gas, and it just made her respond so much quicker that in his mind and his theory was it made her a better rider for that reason.
Do we have any questions from our Facebook audience?
We're good.
Anybody else out here would like to ask a question?
I'd just like to throw a plug in. If you're online, make sure and follow us on Facebook at Mountain Valley Machine, and then on Instagram, it's MVM Motorsports.
So tell us where you're located at in Utah and give us your website address.
So we're in Smithfield, Utah. It's about 8 miles north of Logan. We're about 20 miles south of the Idaho border, so we go poach Bret's territory every once in a while. And our website is mountainvalleymachine.com. Very simple to find. We have, like I said, our install videos and everything are on there. Aaron?
You talked a little bit about how the Expert is a little different with the tunnel or the running boards, and it takes a little bit different to install.
Yeah, so one thing that's a little bit different on the Expert with the new extruded running boards, things are really tight down in the well, actually where the chain case drops below the running board. What we found, three things we found. First of all, make sure you get your splines on the bottom of it. It's going to be kicked out a little bit. I just took the plastic dead blow hammer and tapped it about 3 times, and it's popped right on, slid on. When you install your belt, go front to back with your belt. So you start it on the bottom, front of the bottom pulley, and roll it around the back. It'll come in just fine. And then to take it off, you literally have to pull the belt 90 degrees to the pulley. So literally it's going to end up like this. It's still going to be locked into cogs, but you're going to get the face of the belt like this. Roll your track backwards, and it'll just shoot it out the front of the case. So it is a little different than your install, but it's still definitely doable.
Hey, will you grab your belt there? So when you were talking about tensioning, you're not pinching the belt, you're pulling it out, correct?
We're pushing it. We're still pushing it in. Belt manufacturers, they'll tell you that they want you to pull a belt out, but there's no room in a case. That's one thing. There's some similarities between us and everybody, because literally we're fitting in the same chain case, right? We have the same amount of space. We're not Arctic Cat or Skidoo or Polaris or Yamaha. We don't have proprietary stuff with belt manufacturers. We buy what they have on the shelf and make it work. So they do mention to do that. The only difference, we do push this way, but our tensioners, rather than pushing like this on the belt, we're pulling it like this, and you're tightening it instead of loosening the bolt.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for attending both online, Facebook, and here in our audience. Again, I'm Matt Allred, and this is Dean Harris.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep.